Okay, hey friend, this is Giant Chat. It's episode 4. I thought we just had to do this interview. The re-release of the Steven Wilson remix just came out yesterday, and I just thought, this is a worthy occasion for us to get together. Okay, I guess we just wanted to try this one time where some of the fans are going to be able to maybe pop in unexpected. But like I said, we just want to get together and talk about this amazing album. I was 5 when this came out, 1976, recorded in Advision Studios. And I tell you, coming off the heels of Freehand, they thought, here we go, we're on our way here. And they went into the studio real quick, and it's an amazing story. I know Alan Benjamin. He is long time, he's one of the faithful Gentle Giant fans. Alan Benjamin is in the band Advent. If you don't know, you definitely need to get Silent Sentinel, if not all 3 of their albums. And they got a 4th one coming up. Am I right, Alan?
Yeah, we're working on it now. I've been driving myself crazy with one of Henry's killer compositions. It's just almost impossible to play, like typical. So that's why I was doing all that. That's why my eyes are drooping. That's just one reason.
I see. Okay, thanks. Christian Toma, you were on an episode a little while back, and you play guitar, you play drums, Gentle Giant fan. And where is it that you live again? I forget.
I'm based in Iowa.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm glad you joined. We had fun last time. Now, Mark Katera, a longtime Gentle Giant faithful, and I'm glad to have you with us. It's an honor.
Hey, great idea you had here, Kirk.
Well,
I was just going to watch it afterwards, and I said, why not?
I tell you, it's a pleasant surprise.
Actually, I saw Kiirja say that she was going to join, and I said, well, I'm going to pop on and say hi to Kiirja.
So Kiirja, I was surprised to see your comment, and you said you wanted to join. So I was like, I'm glad you're here. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how long you've been a Giant fan? And
yeah, I sent you an email about the last one, but anyway, yeah, I've been a you guys have already heard this. Mark and Alan have heard this story a million times already, but I first heard Gentle Giant in about 73. I think it was 3 friends ran out, bought the album, and fell in love. And literally like fell in love. And then went out and said, okay, where are the rest of the albums? And I went down, and I think I bought, what did I get? I don't even remember now. Might have been the first album. But anyway, after that, I was like watching for all the other albums. Been just an absolute fanatic fan since then. I organized one of the first pre-Gorg fan dinners in Cambridge in 1998 that was attended by Dan Barrett and a bunch of people that I'm not sure. We had a list called On Reflection, and I connected up with all of those people, went down to New York, met these crazy guys, and hung out, and eventually went to Gorg. And Mark's, we go way back. When 3 friends finally did their first performance, Mark and Dave Sr. and JJ and who else was it? I think it was
Pierre, who went on to sing with 3 friends, was there. The first time I saw him.
Remember that huddle we had when we just had this big group hug, and we're like, we did it, we got them together, or as close as we could possibly have done so at the time. And that
Well,
was a thrill.
Yeah, great times.
Hey, I want to get to you, Jacob and Brett, but I had to let CJ in. CJ Irwin. I've been dying to have him on the show. He's there in Alaska, but Brett Travis, we haven't talked. Any friend of Jacob's is a friend of mine. Jacob Feldman is the unofficial #1 Gentle Giant fan. Just asking.
Way too kind, my friend.
I agree with you there. He lives and breathes Gentle Giant.
I tell you, anybody that has cogs and cogs for their email address, we're instant friends. So
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
95, I think.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I'm glad you joined us, Brett. You kind of live in the same town there with Jacob?
I live here in the Los Angeles area. I've been a Gentle Giant fan since I don't know, 1973. So 10th grade, one of my buddies turned me on to him. Octopus was the latest album, which, you know, if you can see, I definitely I'm an Octopus fan. But the first album I bought new was In a Glass House, and that was like, that blew my mind as well. It's just a great album. Just a great album. And I was a real hardcore fan. I had a denim overcoat made by Faded Glory that I was able to get. I schmoozed with people in A&R and Capitol Records. I was able to get an iron-on patch. I don't know if anybody had an iron-on Gentle Giant patch, but I ironed it on the back of this denim overcoat that I used to wear all the time, and used to get in fights at school over it because people said, "Who the hell is Gentle Giant? What kind of freaks are those?" And I used to get in fights with Kiss fans and Zeppelin fans and all those people. And I said, "Well, you're just showing me your ignorance by not even know who they are, you know." So it was wild. But you know, I've got some great Gentle Giant stories I can share with you guys when you give me my turn. But I just yeah, I mean, I lived Gentle Giant when they were around. I got all my ticket stubs here. I can show you all the shows I went to. I didn't miss one time they came in town. Just the best ever, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's good to meet you, and you're always welcome. Last but not least, Jacob, my friend, I'm glad you joined, and you're one of the true Gentle Giant evangelists, and spreading the word. And
Mr. Kurt, good evening, my friend, my Gentle Giant brother. I love you to death, man, and I want to thank you for all you do for all the community of Gentle Giant and spreading the gospel of the greatest, most epic, legendary, most criminally, obscenely underrated band ever.
You know what's funny is I could be anywhere on the internet and I could see your comments about Gentle Giant. I would know, even if I didn't see your name, I'd know who it was. I know who it was.
If Gary Green's watching, he was asking. I saw a video recently about a month ago, and he's all, "Who's this guy who's always raving about the most criminally underrated band ever?" I gotta talk to him, man. And it's like, but he goes by the moniker 1, 2, 3, 5, and that's in the heyday when I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how to do the put it in properly for the for the internet. I was a Dumbo, and I still am. But anyway, he's like, "Yeah, who is this guy?" Like, I got to shout out to him. I got to give him a big hug, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, you know the story about giving a big hug to Derek Shulman. So.
Oh my gosh, I died laughing. I was on the road, and Derek and I were talking, and he told me the story. You had gone to another concert, and you knew that.
Yeah, Neil Morris. I'm sorry, Neil Morris.
You went to go see Neil Morris, and you found out Derek was there, and you. Tell me, you ended up following him to a dinner restaurant, I guess.
What happened was I went to the show in Whittier, California. It was the Whittier Theater, and I was sitting there waiting for the show to begin, and some guy behind me tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you know, I was wearing an interview shirt with a rainbow on it, you know, like I had a custom-made shirt." And he's all, "You know, hey, by the way, you know that guy, that lead singer is here tonight. He's here." And I go, "Where is he?" It's like, I first I didn't believe him. And then I said, "Where is he?" "Oh, he's somewhere around." And so I'm all, okay, maybe this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And then later on, I looked backstage after the concert. I looked, in the green room, which was like a little small classroom. and then he wasn't there. So anyway, after the concert, I was all bummed out. Oh God, he's not around. So we were walking to the parking lot back to my car, and my friend and I, and there's like next to the theater, there's like another room where like this after hours event was going on, like, and we walked over there. I was like, well, let's check this out. What's going on over there? So anyway, I'm like not a bouncer, but a security guy, and I had the shirt on, and I go, hey, what's going on over there? Like, and he said, hey, I think this guy is in here, that you want to talk to, because I said, yeah, we want to check out what's going on over there. And long story short, we found out that Ray Shulman was actually inside the place. And the guy's all, yeah, I think I can go in there and get him for it.
Oh.
He comes back out, and I just was like in awe. Like, we talked to him for 10 minutes. I go, hey, I'm not gay, but I want to hug you, man. I want to hug the hell out of you, man. I give him a big bear hug, and we talked about, that was when Three Friends was just starting out, and like we talked to him for a while, like, about that and other things, what he thought about that, and I just gave him a big hug, and it was just a beautiful moment. It was an event to remember for the ages.
Oh yeah, I was laughing. I just laughed out loud when you said that. I just thought, man, he's such a trooper, though. All the guys are. So we got CJ.
CJ.
There you go. The audio
Yes.
in. The
How
audio
you doing,
in.
man?
There we go. Great. Fantastic.
Love that, Rick.
Well, he's got more
Thank
than
you.
one.
I
Okay.
have Matte Black 330, but that double neck is awesome.
Yeah. There'll be a work in progress. A lot of things that are honestly very, very wrong with it that you can't see far away, but when you look at it, the more you look at it,
Yeah.
the worse it gets.
Now, for those Gentle Giant fans watching, CJ, I mean, of course, you were in the proclamation video at least 3 or 4 times, and you also
Yep.
were able to synchronize some Gentle Giant music with some 8mm clips I found of an old concert. And
Think up some 1980 footage. Very, very proud of that from the
Yeah.
civilian tour.
So I guess we're all here to talk about the interview album. Christian, what's your thoughts? I mean, what's your thoughts? You kind of came the route of other progressive rock and kind of discovered Gentle Giant. And so you said, I think Acquiring the Taste was one of your first albums, I believe. When you came
Octopus was the first one, the first full album. It was kind of funny because I was somewhat prog snobby in that I'm like, okay, it's not prog if it's less than 10 minutes. I need the epics, I need the long epics. So when I saw like the timestamps on the Sight and Sound video from '78, saw all of them were shorter than 10 minutes. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I have to dig back further. I need to find where's the 20-minute epic. I gotta find the 20-minute epic. What? And then excerpts from Octopus. I was like, okay, so that must be the epic. And it's just, of course, several short bits of full songs. But I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll have to deal with this. But turned out, so I've got attention deficit disorder, and pretty much the band personifies attention deficit disorder on steroids. So it's like, oh, okay, there we go. Something to listen to every different day is which instrument do I want to focus on today?
Yeah. It's amazing that the Gentle Giant music, it brings in new audiences, and it also it's still here today. What is it? Almost 50 years, I think.
Yeah,
that it's almost 50 years, and it's making it strikes a chord even with the young fans. But also, Christian, like I said, you kind of found your way through progressive rock and stumbled upon Gentle Giant. But what was your thoughts on the interview album yourself?
When I first listened to it, around 3 years ago, I did not like it that much. I only liked the
Yeah.
first track, the title track, and then I Lost My Head. But through repeated listens, it became my favorite. It is now my favorite Gentle Giant album. And when I went to go meet Gary, I thought we were just going to get some coffee, but he gave me some gifts, and one of them was this promo interview
Yeah.
poster.
Which,
when it
which I'm
first
coming
came
to your
out.
house to steal, by the way. I'm
I'm super jealous.
And then this
Super
kind of just
jealous.
made me want to listen to the album even more because now I have this. So I was just like obsessed with the album for a few weeks, and
yeah.
I can't wait to receive my copy
I think
of the new one. Just incredible album. I absolutely love it.
Okay. Is it Kiirja? Is that how you pronounce your name?
extremely underrated in my opinion.
Mhm.
I know you disagree. but-
Okay, I have to unmute. There we go. Yeah.
So, tell us, where does Interview kind of fall in your favorites list of theirs? What's your take on the album yourself?
Well, it's probably, I don't know, fifth or sixth. I mean, I Three Friends and Octopus and Power and Glory and Freehand, like those are probably my top four. But you know, the thing is, it's not really so much. I don't rate it so much. I think Three Friends has a special place in my heart because it was just like there's not a wrong note on that whole album, and it was my first album, and I just like if you put the album on, you cannot get my attention. I'm just in it. But as for the other albums, it's I don't really rate it on an album basis. I mean, I rate it more by songs. You know, I have songs that I more or less like on all the albums. So I mean, I really like Empty City. I like songs with really good vocals because I had a lot of experiences as a classical vocalist, so I really appreciate good vocals. I love when I don't know, I love when they use the vibes. It's just like there's just certain moments in each song that will hit me. You know, I love Black Cat, and I love Twilight, and you know, it's just so it's more like each song is just a different creation to me. I can't really do it on an album basis, but I just wanted to point here. This is behind me is an album cover that the guy signed for me when I was going through cancer years ago, and then this postcard I sent Gary some fish. I make these little origami fish, and I sent Gary a box load of them, and he sent me the postcard. So that's all hanging up on my wall here.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, Interview, I remember, I mean, the first time I heard it, and I remember the Peter Sutcliffe, who is Phil Sutcliffe. You hear his voice and the chairs rattling, and then Interview comes on. Wham! It's just kind of out of nowhere. And for me, it was that album. I don't know. The more I listen to it, it is so quintessentially Gentle Giant. It is not like the other ones, and you kind of expected maybe after Freehand was a little bit more accessible that they were going to kind of go in that direction, and it was a surprising album, and it has some of the most, I mean, design. It's an extremely complex album. It was one that maybe they wouldn't have played a lot of these songs live, but I just think it's brilliant. Every song in there I love. I would have to say I was just listening there at the park with my kids, and Empty City, Timing, and The Interview. They're my three favorites on the album, but it is quintessentially Gentle Giant. It's a great album, and I I wanted to ask some of you guys, does anybody got their hands on the Steven Wilson remix of this yet? Does any of you
Not
have?
a physical copy, but I did play it. I've got it downloaded, heard it. Oh my goodness, phenomenal. Timing, it's very crazy listening to timing because they've got the vocals more crisp. So you can actually understand what Derek is saying versus how you never realize how muddy some of the mixes are in the song until you listen to the new masters and you're like, oh wow,
Mhm.
this was
Okay.
this was
They
definitely
added
a little bit.
like I think a new verse and a couple of new like words in timing too. Derek does
Yeah.
like do it or something like that before he goes.
Yeah,
Wait the day timing. That was so cool to hear the first time again. Oh my gosh, it's just the new mix is it's so good. Oh my god.
Well, I tell you what, let's one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to watch a little bit of Steven Wilson remix the video, and we just watched it together. I'm gonna turn that on in just a second here. Give me a second.
Where should we begin then?
Okay, I tell you, I'm not going to be as sensitive my ears with some of this, but can you guys tell the difference in that song versus the original?
You gotta remember.
Oh my-
Go ahead. What do you think? What do you think, Mark? And whoops, you guys are muted.
Well, I don't think I did it justice because I'm listening to one ear on my headset here, and it was a little bit broken No, but I tell you, Ray freaking Shulman, man, holy cow,
Oh my goodness, the grunt on
that was
that
just
bass on that song.
gorgeous. That was just gorgeous.
I wanted to, and you have to excuse me because this day was so hectic. I wanted to have more planned out here, but one of the things that I did want to talk about here, just as fans and as friends here, the passing of Ray. I have to apologize to you guys for I didn't think it was going to affect me that much. I had to take a break. I thought when Ray passed away, I just thought, you know what, the family needs some time, and it affected me more than I thought. But and I want to say, I think we all want to say to the
Oh,
Ray's family and to the whole Gentle Giant band, we're just so sorry about his passing. He's our hero, but he's your family, your friend, and we want to.
Absolutely. Amen, brother.
Yes, I mean, the thing about Ray is he doesn't come out in front. I've said this before. He doesn't come out in front and like Chris Squire, like Geddy Lee. He's not in your face, his brilliance, but it's like the more you listen to Gentle Giant and the more things like maybe this remix is going to bring out, he's just an amazing player. Alan, I don't know what you have more familiarity with maybe still Steven Wilson and his history. Can you tell me about what you've heard in his remixes, the originals versus, I mean, versus Steven Wilson's? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, it's an interesting question because I have to maybe be a little honest and say I'm not a big Steven Wilson fan, so I'll probably get shunned from the prog community.
Well, that's okay.
He is brilliant at cleaning up, the old recordings and at, getting a very similar vibe when he wants to, with newer technology, very clean. I did actually listen to the Spotify stream of his remix of Interview just before we started. And what struck me is how quiet the opening interview, segment was before Interview. It's just so quiet. He strayed a little bit more from the original on this one, but I also wonder whether his focus is more 5/1, because I really enjoy his work more when I listen in 5/1, which I don't do a lot. We do have a 5/1 system downstairs, but nobody ever goes down there. And I have a nice stereo up here. So I think I prefer, listening to his work in 5/1, and certainly from a clarity standpoint. And I think, just on the one listen to Interview, I heard so many details that I didn't hear before, maybe in ways that as a purist for Gentle Giant, like I wouldn't like to hear that all the time myself, but it's really cool. It's almost like hearing extra, like unreleased isolated tracks, but in context, if you will. And it's really cool, and I enjoyed a lot of it. I have to say that my highlight on the first listen was how big the drums were at the end of Design. They just really popped out. They were so deep and forceful in a way that really worked well. And a lot of Steven's choices I found really interesting this time around, and really brought out some very cool aspects that I had never really focused on or never felt that way before. But again, I love the music so much. I'd rather kind of have the hiss and the other things just to have the original. It's just like it's kind of like the Bible for me. You don't want to mess with it.
I kind of know where you're going with that. I mean, anytime, even when you hear somebody in concert and they change the song, you're so familiar with it. It's a little bit jarring. But there have been, now Civilian is the one that I would love to see somebody really bring John, just wham out in your, I would like John Weathers, his drums to be like way at the forward. I've heard some of what is it, like Number One. I've heard that played live, and there's such an energy. It changes the song, And there's things like that I'd love to hear on them be able to do with certain giant songs. But you're right, it's you're like, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be that way, because you've been listening it for so many years. What are
Right.
your
Yeah, and then there's also there's something about the whole combination of what you're used to, especially for studio recordings, at least to me, that when it, when it's close, it can be really great, but then when there's certain things that sort of extend beyond the boundary of your experience, your immersive experience, and go, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You sort of get a little slapped, like, wait a minute, what's going on there? And you get sort of taken out of that. And I find a little bit, but that's just me. And I know I'm in the vast minority. In fact, one of my oldest, dearest friends was just visiting a week or two ago, and she loves everything Steven Wilson has done from an engineering perspective, and is always trying to convince me that I should give more listens and whatnot. And we had a discussion about that, as well. But again, I think he's a brilliant guy. It's just something about maybe also the Gentle Giant stuff is just too sacred to me.
Yeah. Mark, do you know anything about, I thought maybe you would know about the history of Steven Wilson kind of getting involved with Gentle Giant. My take was that and Christian, maybe you'd know some of this. You seem to be a music aficionado, or CJ. I thought he kind of pursued Gentle Giant. He wanted to do this, and that's kind of where the idea came from.
Yeah, that's the way I understood it unfolding. He reached out to Derek and said, he wanted to be involved in doing some of these remixes. Christian, is that what you heard as well?
Yeah, I that's what I've heard.
Yeah, which is really nice. I mean, we wouldn't have any of this stuff. I mean, if you look back, like, so when Interview came out, I was 11, and I didn't hear it until much later. I didn't even know Gentle Giant existed as a band until 1980. So I missed the boat entirely. So a friend of mine went to a concert, came back, and he said, "Oh, I saw this great band, and the next time they come to town, we're going to go. You're going to love them." That was June of 1980 or May of 1980. And the next time they came to town did not happen. So Interview is one of those albums that was really easy to find and readily available. It was on all the shelves, and that wasn't true for the catalog in 1980. I mean, for sure. Especially in America, there are things that were easier to get. So I think we're really lucky, regardless of what, and we all have these handles that we hold on to and things that we look forward to in those special moments. And when you listen to some of the Steven Wilson mixes, they're not there sometimes. They're misplaced, or other things are brought out. And as much as, and I agree with Alan, as much as you appreciate the work that went into it, it's like, hey, wait a second, this stuff's sacred. So I've only ordered the vinyl at this point. I did not get the CD, and obviously we're gonna have to wait for the vinyl till September. So I'm really interested in to see what happens. I don't think any of these remixes would replace, some of my earlier versions that I have on CD and vinyl. So
one of the things that I do when I listen is, if I'm in the mood to bring out the more bass or bring out more of Kerry's playing or whatever, is I play the recording with a different EQ. I'll EQ it differently, play it on different speakers, play it with headphones, and I kind of really like to do my own remixing depending on what I'm in the mood for. And so I haven't really spent a lot of time on the new recordings. I mean, I'm glad somebody's spending time on it, and especially on some of the recordings that were not so good. But I mean, I like to do my own mixing.
Well, there was a friend of ours, his name's Mark Gilbert, and back in the day, Alan's remembering, he had this underground remix. He called them the MG Burt remixes, and the first one he went after was The Missing Piece, because it's just so one-dimensional in the mix, and especially in the low end. And then he, one by one, he went through the ones that he wanted to fix. And I think he just re-EQ'd him. I don't think he did anything tremendous.
Remastered.
I talked to Mark. I talked to Mark, and that's what he did. 'Cause
Yeah.
Mark and I went to Near Fest together, and in his car, and that's a whole nother story. But anyway, yeah, that's what he told me. He talked a lot about remixing all the albums, and I think I have them all on CD. So
Yeah, so Mark was like the original Steven Wilson of at least of our crew of folks back in the day that first got together in the mid to late 90s and obsessed over this band. So
the thing is, like, I went to see see Gentle Giant. I saw them on the Missing Piece tour in, oh God, what was it, 78? I can't even remember what years what anymore, but it was just fabulous. And it was,
78.
you can't compare the live experience with a studio recording. It's like a completely different thing.
I wanted to, if I can just cut in here, I want to say hi to Lee Hansen. If you guys have not heard it's the UP3 show, it's a prog rock podcast, and one of their first episodes, they featured Gentle Giant. And Lee, it's good to have you join us.
Thank you, Kirk. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
I tell you, if you guys haven't heard that show, it's great. I mean, you and Craig and Tony,
Yes.
you talk about not only the godfathers of progressive rock, but everything new. It's a great place to learn about new bands that are out there, kind of what's happening in the prog music world. And I think it's the best prog podcast out there. But I'm glad you joined us, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you.
We were just kind of talking about the Interview album and talking about specifically the Steven Wilson remix. And
Yes.
so you're pretty familiar with Steven Wilson, all the different iterations that he's been musically involved. Can you just give us a little bit of like an encapsulated kind of what Steven Wilson is about?
Yeah. So Steven Wilson, I think, is probably the most important person going around in prog right now because of his influence. He was the key driver behind Porcupine Tree, obviously. A lot of you probably already know that. But he's been in at least 6 or 7 different bands over the last 10, 20 years. And, not just the music he's creating, but the mixes and remasters he does are amazing. And, if you guys are here for Gentle Giant, I'm sure you would be into a lot of the other remixes and remasters he does, because he's done pretty much the entire Jethro Tull catalog. He's done most of the King Crimson catalog, even with with the members of King Crimson looking over his shoulder. And I think the mixes just come out much, much better. We're talking about Interview, but the one that I really found made a big difference was Power and the Glory, because he remixed and remastered that one. And suddenly the whole bottom end opens up on that album if you have the original. So I love what he does. He seems to be able to get the original mixes with individual tracks, and that makes a huge, huge difference. But I love what he's done on Interview too. To me, Interview was already a well-mixed album compared to something like some of the earlier stuff like Acquiring the Taste or Three Friends or any of those. But still, really, he's one of the few musicians that if he does something, I just go buy it because it's going to be good. And that's really, I find he's got the biggest influence right now in music. So I was thrilled when I heard he was doing Interview, because I've always liked Interview, but to me, it sits in a little bit of an odd place for me with Gentle Giant, maybe because it's in between Freehand and Missing Piece. But you know, and Missing Piece is where you start to hear that transition from Gentle Giant, you know, trying to go for a little more pop sound and then into civilian. But parts of Interview to me sound almost avant-garde, like almost like a Philip Glass kind of thing. Does anybody here agree with that, or?
No, that's true.
Yeah, I'd say it's their most challenging in many ways, or at least contains some of their most challenging material. Design, I guess, being
Design.
the most, and I think actually Give It Back in its own way too, you know, which is actually the first tune I fell in love with on the album when I first bought it, which is odd because I'm not really a reggae guy, but I just really somehow that just drew me right in.
Maybe reggae the greatest ever.
Well, I tell you,
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, this show was originally intended to not be an interview show. It kind of went that direction the first couple shows, but I don't want you guys to feel like I'm a host, I'm the director here. I want everybody to just jump in, talk about something, ask questions. That's what it's meant to be. But Lee, if you,
I think one of the craziest things for Steven Wilson's association, if you will, one of the craziest things is he's gone on record like he did two of Emerson, Lake and Palmer's albums,
Yes.
and then dipped off, and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to do this because I'm not really passionate about Emerson, Lake and Palmer's albums. And what surprised me is hearing, oh yeah, he's going to remix Interview and The Missing Piece, which I'm just, okay, that's kind of way out of left field because most people, I love them. They left the mark. And to hear him go, no, I'm not gonna touch Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but I want to do these albums is just mind blowing. I'm very thankful because those are two of my favorite Gentle Giant albums, but it's just like it's almost like far out of left field, which is crazy.
how would you like to try to remix the Gentle Giant album with, say, Ray or Derek or one of them looking over your shoulder?
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
That'd be crazy.
I guess
Yeah.
he has that kind of confidence in what he's doing, but my gosh.
Yeah, because he's done the remixes of King Crimson with Robert Fripp over his shoulder.
Yeah, I'm sure he can
Yeah.
handle. I'm sure he can handle
Oh yeah, that's
anybody
Exactly.
after that.
Yeah.
If you can handle Fripp, if you can handle Fripp, exactly, you can
handle
probably handle
anyone.
Derek. Yeah. Yeah, you know, because we're going to do this today, I went back and obviously listened to the interview again because it had been a while. And I find the other piece that is interesting to me is the B-side, all but one of those songs are written just by Derek Shulman.
Yeah.
And you look at the other albums and it's always, or not always, but a lot of times it's Shulman, Minier. And so
Yeah,
it almost makes me wonder, like, what was the impetus for, I think it's Another Show, Empty City, and Timing are all written just by Derek Shulman, which I found really interesting.
True, my friend. Sorry.
What's
Sorry,
that?
that's true.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're wrong about that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think that's correct either. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure that Empty City, that the
Empty
release
City
was
was
a
written by
good
Ray
part
Shulman.
Ray.
And
Okay.
Timing's, sorry.
Oh, maybe it is Ray.
Sorry, I could disagree with you there.
Okay.
I was going to be
Fernando.
quiet. I was going to be quiet and let you guys do the lifting on that one.
I was watching your face, Mark. I was waiting.
Trying to get the track list up here.
About that.
Yeah.
Hey, is that Jacob Feldman?
It is.
Yes.
Yes. And-
Oh man, I'm sorry. How you doing, buddy?
Hey man, how are you?
Good.
I
Good.
don't.
Good.
We got the Hollywood Squares. I don't even know who's this right here. I'm talking. Mark Katera?
I'm the bald one with the goatee.
Oh, sorry. Hey, man. Finally, nice to see your face and
Yeah.
for everything you do. I love you, man, for all you do, all the general.
I love you too, and I tell you, back in our time when we were young and foolish and thought we could just obsess over this band and maybe do something special. I look at CJ and I look at you, Jacob, and like, well, you would have fit right into the crazy bunch of us back then for sure.
Hey, the guy
I
that
know.
started-
I always
the guy that
tell
started
everybody.
the thing was Bud, the guy named Bud, I forgot his last name, but Bud, the thing that started this whole page, the Pan Facebook page was Bud, I don't know his
Ken
last
Barrett. Dan
Huh?
Barrett, he lives outside, in Dan Barrett, he lives
Or-
outside Boston.
Know his last name, I don't know it.
Oh,
but-
are you talking about the site that we admin now? That was Bud Johnson? Is that
yeah,
what you're?
there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, he's the one that I think he's the one, the originator that started the whole thing. The whole
Well,
page.
for the Facebook page, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Right. So we
As-
all owe him a big thanks, right?
Yeah, and then previous to him, Dan Barrett, started the Gentle Giant page. That's how we all stumbled on it. Derek is responsible for writing some stuff that you would not guess.
Yeah, like Time to Kill. Time to Kill. He wrote that.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
Or
What?
or the lyrics to Aspirations,
Yes.
Right.
for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Lee, I don't know how much your music expertise goes outside of progressive rock, but are you familiar with Jacob's father, Victor Feldman?
No.
Tell who your dad, what
well,
bands he was in.
Victor Feldman, he played on all the Steely Dan albums, percussion and keyboards, and if you have the Asia album, he plays keyboard, like on the Black Cow solo, he's doing
Yeah.
the solo on that, and he's played with everybody from Miles Davis to Seals and Croft, the Doobie Brothers to
Man.
Wow.
Jones, Christopher Cross, and TV and movie stuff, like everything from Planet of the Apes to Charlie's Angels to like Let's Get It On, like Marvin Gaye and all. It's just I could go on and on, but yeah, like LA
Okay.
fusion band in the 70s called LA Express with Tom Scott.
Tom Scott, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I come from a wild background. I went to a Tom Waits session in 70. I mean, all sorts of different stuff, and it was crazy, like a great upbringing, but it was a beautiful time, and I missed my father big time, but it was yeah, so
Yeah.
I could go on.
Now I have to ask
That's
while
an
it's fresh.
That's an impressive
been-
list.
I've been listening to Gaucho
Picture of
recently.
what Victor
Is
Feldman looks like. Jake looks just like his dad.
No, actually, I look like Mike Stosher from the
Oh, yeah,
Imagineer
okay.
from the Angels.
Okay. Go Dodgers.
But oh well, enough of that. So we gave you the Cliff Note version, so I could go on, but thank you for asking that, by the way,
Yeah.
Kurt.
Well, I thought
I
you
do
were
have to-
Carry on.
I do have to ask now, was your dad on Gaucho? Out of curiosity, 'cause I've been playing the heck out of it.
Well, no, he just played on Hey 19, the conga drums, but no, he
Okay.
just we mainly feature on an Asia, on the keyboards like
Yeah.
blues.
Yeah, it's good.
I
That's a
got
killer album.
I was in the Steely Dan tribute band for 20 years, and well, I don't know if I should say this, but they told me I should, take the COVID shot, and they fired me. And now,
Well,
now I know more than 3 chords, so I'm doomed. I love my progressive fusion bands, like obviously my favorite is Giant, but then my two next to that is like the Bill Bruford band, Dixie Dregs, PFM, and Jeff Berlin, Jocko, and all that stuff. But it's like, well, anyway, enough of that.
Bruford's stuff is killer.
What's that?
yeah.
Bruford's stuff is killer.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's my
The Feels Good to Me album is just, oh my
Bill
God.
Bruford,
Gradually Going Tornado.
Bill Bruford,
Oh.
and Dixie Dregs are my second favorite bands next to Gentle Giant.
Oh my goodness, that is awesome. On
Yeah.
a similar note, what my most
Then
obscure
you got Steely Dan, PFM, Rush, and all that stuff. It's like,
Yep.
it's anyway. Enough of me. Go ahead, continue, please.
Well, let me bring this back to the interview album. I think that Gentle Giant, they had kind of looked at what their music as a chapter in their life that they had closed. And then there's people like Alan and Mark that really, the internet came by and it has revived interest. People that had missed the albums, missed their career, were finding Gentle Giant. And I think as people like Steven Wilson and people that were affected, influenced by Gentle Giant, Lee, you could attest that Haken and other bands, it's in their list of their influences, began to give them more interest. And then Gentle Giant has started to respond with some merchandise and some of these, the remixes, re-releases, Unburied Treasure, and their new live set. What's that called again, Alan? The new live.
Front row seat or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, front row center, I think it was.
Yeah,
wasn't
that's it, yeah.
Okay. And we're beginning to see things like this, and interview, the remix was just released yesterday. But you know, they, at one point, I mean, they were beholden to a studio who would allow them to release things. And now we're in the age where anybody can release something, but not necessarily make money at it.
Mhm.
And the point I wanted to make was that, you know, Gentle Giant is doing this. I think they're doing this for the fans, and they are going to, you know, they're going to reap something out of it. But nowadays, you can't even make money unless you're touring. So this is kind of a gift to us, this re-release, and I think this is great. And I think the more that we respond, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to start this show, was because the more we respond, the more we pay attention, the more things we get. And I'm looking forward to things in the future. But was Gentle Giant your first episode of your podcast, Lee? Was that the first one?
Yeah, we did an intro that was just welcome to UP3 show. That was the first. But the first real episode was Gentle Giant. And I'd been kind of dying to do that. I'm kind of curious for Christian. You're obviously a youngster. Tell me how you got into Gentle Giant, because I can see why all the rest of us got into it.
All right, so I was in 8th grade, so pretty young. I mean, I'm gonna be a junior now, but so
Okay.
still I'm pretty young. But I was very, very big into King Crimson, late 6th grade, and just stretching out my progressive limbs, I guess you could say. Genesis, I found them,
Right.
fell in love with them. I went to the Three of a Perfect Pair music camp, and I'm still going to that, and going there really helped me be like, okay, here are the bands that I need to listen to in order to get this type of music. And one of the bands that they just couldn't stop talking about was Gentle Giant. And I've heard of Gentle Giant before a little bit, and I love what I heard, but that going to that camp really helped me listen to them actively.
That's
And I
awesome.
just can't stop listening to them now. They are
Awesome.
probably my favorite band of all time.
Well,
Very
I
cool.
assume everybody here has heard the crowd mix of Proclamation, the one that was redone by all these people in the home studio. It was like,
And video.
Rachel Flowers was on it. I mean, Steve Hackett was on it, and the original Gentle Giant guys were on it.
CJ down here, he was in it.
DJ was on it.
Yeah, is that right?
I played bass on it, and most of the biggest highlight was the electric piano break. The bass after the hail, that was primarily me. I don't know if anyone played the bass notes on the keyboard like the bass Rhodes electric piano sound. So I think that's how most of it was. Yeah.
Yep.
And circling back honestly to the fan base point, it's insane because you're absolutely right. Gentle Giant, the band themselves, as well as the family, because as we all know, his son is the one, Derek's son,
Noah,
the one carrying the torch and carrying it high and putting the most effort and keeping it alive. It's really stunning and amazing to have a band that actually responds to us fans and actually gives us what we want versus bands like, Genesis, who they've even openly admit, oh yeah, we've got all the tapes, so we've got all the live stuff, we've got everything, but we're gonna drop it because they won't see money out of it. Whereas Gentle Giant's like, we're gonna open the floodgates. We're good. We know you guys want it. We know you guys would love it. Here it is. Have at it. Enjoy it. And they really highlight it and spotlight it and really look out for us fans, whereas other bands are just like, oh no, it sounds terrible. This won't make a dime. We're not gonna just give you little sprinkles here and there. Like,
I wanted to go kind of do a very quick, and we're probably going to wrap this up soon here. But I wanted to go through the songs of the interview album, but I wanted to ask you guys just real quick, and just whoever, here's a band, I've said this before, that they had 10 albums. They had very limited video of them in playing in concert. And here we are 50 years, since they debuted. I mean, it was before I was born, and we're still talking about it. What can you attest that to? What is the staying power? Why are we still, fascinated with this band?
Because they're geniuses.
Because they're unique.
Yeah, and the substance of the music.
Bottom line.
The substance and the execution of the music. I just think it's as simple as that.
I really do think one of the main reasons is there is no one else that sounds like Gentle Giant.
Yes,
There,
indeed.
Yeah.
there never has
Yep.
been, there never will be. They
Right
are
on,
they are
brother.
their own.
It-
Like if you look at prog rock as a whole, Gentle Giant are in their own little subgenre of that, just them. There's
Yeah,
nothing that sounds
Yeah, and it's part of their own worst enemy in that same respect, because it's like, say, oh, I like this band Genesis or Yes or Jethro Tull or whatever, and you're like, where do you find that band? And say, well, if you like this, you'll like Gentle Giant. Maybe a little Tull. It's not like you can say, oh man, you're gonna really like this band Gentle Giant. They stand alone, man. They're not an avenue in from another band, and that's probably why they achieved the level of success they did.
Amen, brother.
Well, when I
Yeah.
talked to, Gary and Kerry at Gorgs, and I was, and I was trying to explain what it was that was special about Gentle Giant. I said, I listened to a lot of jazz and a lot of classical, and I was playing classical music. And then I would be listening to rock and roll on the radio. And so I love classical music, I love jazz, and I loved what I was hearing on the radio, but none of them really fulfilled everything that I wanted out of a piece of music. Classical just had these beautiful melodies and harmonies, but rock and roll had this growl, had these claws that would get into you, but they didn't always or very often have good melodies or good harmonies. And Gentle Giant brought all of that together into one piece of music. And that was that fusion is what, for me, just kicked it into a whole nother gear.
Listen,
Nice, very well said.
Kind of quiet, but I want to interject something here too, because I lived this in the 70s. I mean, I lived this stuff. And I went to Cal State Northridge as a music major. And when this album came out, it was quirky, it was different. And Gentle Giant is a musician's band. Most people that really enjoyed Gentle Giant in the 70s, my experience, all my friends were musicians. Everybody that liked Gentle Giant was a musician. It didn't appeal to people that couldn't understand what they were doing. You had to be a musician to understand their genius and what they were all about. All right. You just hear something, go, what the hell is that? It's like they're used to hearing just mainstream shit. All right. But the Gentle Giant, they were throwing so much stuff at you that at first, like, you couldn't comprehend it. But if you're a musician, you can understand their genius, and it all made sense to you. And you're like, damn, these guys are great. And you just don't want to listen to anything else but Gentle Giant. That was, to me, was my favorite band.
Yeah.
And I mean, I listened to all
that's
of
me
them.
I feel like for everyone I've talked to who's listened to Gentle Giant, it's either their favorite band or they don't jive with them at all.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
You can't be
See,
like, I
I'm-
kind of like them.
There's no in between with
Yeah.
Giant, man.
Yep. Yep.
Well,
And
what-
going further on Brett's point, that's 110% me. I started off on trumpet, a multi-instrumentalist, bassist primarily, and occasionally play guitar and everything like that. And so when I saw that video of them from 75, and the bassist is picking up trumpet, then he's picking up acoustic guitar, I'm like, oh wow, there's a bassist like me who fiddles around with a bit of everything. This is awesome. Gotta get into more of that.
Including fiddle.
Yeah. I was like, okay, the band of talented musicians who played more than one, don't stick to anything, truly unique. And as a musician, again, further to your point, as a musician, it just clicks. It's just like, oh, I could see where everything fits in together how it should be.
Well, we have a friend, Dave Senior, who was critical back in the day of kind of getting things started with what
Yep.
we got. Dave kept a relationship up with John, and when we started reaching out with these crazy ideas that we would try to meet him and stuff, Dave really helped because he was still getting Christmas cards from John, and Dave kind of gave us credibility a little bit. Dave's does not consider himself a musician, and when we talk about music and then the musicians come pipe in with their stuff, Dave just laughs at us. He goes, you don't need to be a musician to get this stuff. You just need to be a musician to talk about it with other people.
Right.
Something
Dave
like that.
Has incredible taste in music. Dave turned me on to a lot of really, really good tunes.
Yeah, for sure.
I was gonna say the same kind of an interesting thing in regard to what we've been discussing, in that I've had the privilege of meeting and working with a lot of musicians who are mainly in the prog field, because between what I like and who I know and working in New Jersey Prog House and Nearfest and whatnot, I've met tons of musicians, professional musicians that mainly are in some form of progressive music. And Gentle Giant is the reference standard for most of them. It's by far the most universally loved and respected classic prog influence in all, like by orders of magnitude, I would say, in terms of the musicians I talk to, and the passion, for them is really great. But on the other hand, I do think there are people who aren't musicians who really can enjoy it. It's not common, but it does happen. And I'll just say one thing that actually relates to interview. When I went to tech school in the early 80s, I had a friend who wasn't into prog at all. He only liked straight rock and roll. And I decided for some reason to turn him on to Gentle Giant with the title track of Interview. And he just latched onto it. And we used to drive to school together, cranking it up, that particular tune. And we would be like rocking out in the car like Beavis and Butthead. It was crazy. And he just absolutely loved it. And he had no point of reference for prog. He just,
I have a cassette tape that Kiirja gave me 30 years ago, 25 years ago. That was, I think it was like Gentle Giant songs that non-prog fans would like. I think I don't remember what the approach was, but I gave it to my wife.
Gentle Giant.
Yeah.
Get them hooked on this, and then the rest will follow.
Yeah. I gotta find that thing.
I've tried it on many people, but it didn't work on that many. I mean, either you get it or you don't get it. And
but was Interview on there?
You got that brain, or you don't have that brain.
There's a lot of Carrie singing on that tape. I'm just gonna say that, right?
Oh, well, true. I mean, I'm obviously biased towards, but the thing is, like, I was in college, and I would be blasting out, Selling England by the Pound and Gentle Giant, and people would be walking by my room going, what the heck is that shit?
Yeah, I hear you.
Anyway, but that was in the 70s, that was in the early mid 70s, and people just had these different ideas about what music should be, which is really too bad.
Yeah. My brothers, I have 3 other brothers. They always tell me to turn my music down. I just blast music out of my record player. Like listening to Seconds Out, especially like when the squonk comes back at the end of Los Endos, I just blasting that out. They're like, "What? Turn that down. This is garbage."
No,
like, you don't understand.
That song is therapy to get on a drum set and bang that out. When it'll erase a lot of the problems that you're having in your work life for sure.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, to the album here, I would like to just do a little short. There's 6 songs. Let's just go through one by one. If you haven't had a chance, on the YouTube channel that I have, it's Aspirations Gentle Giant Project. I got a chance to talk to Phil Sutcliffe. He is the voice you hear, and his story that he told me about being invited. Sounds Magazine kind of picked up on the fact that he really clicked with Gentle Giant. So anytime there was a show, they would give him the assignment. And so he eventually got the chance to be in the studio in Advision Studios. And he was there for, I think, about 3 days. And he would come back and so he got to see, I mean, can you imagine being able to be in the studio? But again, on the YouTube channel that I have the interview I did with him. And also I asked him after we had a phone conversation, I said, would you do me a favor? Would you do a voiceover of reading the article that you wrote about this, just so we would have this as you reading that article? And he was nice enough to do that. But it was interesting that he said he had never experienced being in the studio before with somebody, piecing together the album, and they had this short period of time to do this. Derek and the band were discussing in an interview they had recently. They had 3 weeks to write, compose, mix the whole thing. There was no interview album going in there. And they went in there in the studio and did the whole thing, start to finish, in 3 weeks. And at the end, they kind of had this idea. I mean, they hadn't even have the idea of the album, what it was going to be named, or what the theme was going to be. And they said, we're thinking it's going to be called Interview. And then one of them approached Phil. He said, can we do kind of a mock interview? And we're going to use this. And so they did it, and they just kind of clowned around as he would do this kind of fake stiff interview, like a yellow journalism, type of guy that just didn't know music, and he was asking dumb questions. And so when they recorded it, and so we're going to use this in between the songs. And at one point, they said, nah, we're not going to use it. He was really kind of heartbroken about that. But then at the end, they did go through with it. So that's the story of where you hear the voices. But the song Interview, you guys give me your thoughts about this. This was obviously the opening for the album. This was our first taste of this album. And it's, I think, my opinion, one of the strongest songs. I love it. What are your guys' thoughts?
Maybe my single favorite track of theirs, if I had to just pick one. Actually, it's just so powerful and so creative, and it rocks, and it's funky, and it's it's just so yeah, it's why I used it to convert my non-prog friend, because it's just such a cool track. It's hard to find. I mean, I love almost all of their music, but there's something particularly special about the title track.
Yeah, it is definitely my top 3, if not my favorite Gentle Giant song, especially when Carrie starts doing that honky tonk piano solo, and it's just going boom, 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 like the guitar and the bass are just doing these crazy things behind him, and it just, oh my gosh, it's so powerful. Such a funky tune too, especially when it goes boom, ding, boom, ding, boom, ding, ding, boom, ding. The first time I heard that, I didn't even know it was in 4/4 because it sounded so strange. It's just so syncopated.
Yep, and great rhythm.
Great song.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts, Lee?
I love that song. My 2 favorite songs on the album are the first one, the last one, Interview, and I Lost My Head. And I love the album in general because there's so much organ in it. Carrie plays a whole lot of organ in it. And it's that nasty kind of B3 sound, I love that. It just cuts through everything. There's a lot of keyboards all over the place, but this is probably my favorite Carrie Minier album.
Really?
Yeah.
I love the bass lines for sure on that song, just how gritty and raunchy it is for the first half. And then what I freaking love, and that it's just that little bit where they allow John to have the mic and sing that little bit of it. It's just like,
what are your plans for the future now? And then you say what?
Yeah, I just love that little tidbit in it.
Ever, man. Oh my God, what a voice he has, huh?
Yeah,
right. I feel like he was very underutilized. He has a really, really good voice.
Friends, when he sings
like, oh my goodness.
Yes, indeed. Damn great.
Well, that's one thing I like about Steven Wilson, man. The drums, I mean, especially on mobile from freehand, you heard the drums, how he's right in your face, John Weathers, and he was always seemed to be in the background, but I'm so glad that he's been brought right up in your face because it's great, man. Just like Lee said, that bottom end is right at us. And I'm always more bottom end guy anyways.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about Gentle Giant is counting things out, and I find that if I'm listening to something on the radio and it's like, oh, I want to count that out, and it's usually in 7 or 5 or something where the beat is changing every other measure, and I just have this thing about I have to count things out, and
then John plays 4 right through it.
it turns out he just plays 4, except for that. Where's the one and
Oh. 2 weeks in Spain.
The eternal argument about that. I think my favorite tune on Interview is probably Empty City, because of the acoustic guitar, the ethereal mood of it, and the dun 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 dun, and all of that. I think that was probably my favorite of the whole album.
Can't argue with that. They're all damn great, but that's up there.
Well, the first track specifically, as one of those guys that was unfortunately had to listen to the albums out of order, I think I spent a lot of time listening to Interview, and that was like one of the albums that defined the band for me initially. Now, obviously, I listened to a lot of stuff after that. So listening to a song like Interview was like, holy cow, it was almost like, so this is what these guys do. And then, of course, later we learned that there's so many dimensions to what they do, and it's like, so you had that understanding, and then they just blew it away with jazz on Three Friends or something else. But I certainly it holds up. I mean, all the music holds up, but I think sometimes Interview gets a little bit of a short shrift sometimes when people look at it in chronological order. But when you look at it, when you learn it the way I did, it's a strong work for sure.
Yep.
Well,
I just want to say that I think Interview is next to Missing. I think Missing Pieces are most criminally underrated ever. The album, even though
I second that.
Even though it's kind of commercial, it's still damn good commercial. It's way better than 90% or 95% of the commercial music. I mean, you look at it. Who do you think you are? And Missing and Mountain Time and
Mountain Time.
And 2 Weeks in Spain. Those are funky, kick-ass, funky, and they still retain the same Gentle Giant quirkiness, but it's still I mean, okay, most people are not going to like it, like most hardcore Giant fans, but still, I'm sorry, man, I love those songs, man.
I have no use for I Bet You Thought. Sorry.
Well,
no use.
Yeah, Mark, I'm with you on that.
I got no use for that song.
I'm spouting unpopular opinions. I will join you.
I kind of like it, but I can understand that. But for the most part, the second side, come on, man.
Well, it's 2 albums, right? So half of that album was written, and then they went out on a short tour and opened for Yes or whatever for a bit, and then they came back, and at that point they decided that things were going to be different moving forward.
Oh, that was
As Old as You're Young. That's a great song.
Yeah.
Old as You're Young and Memories of Old Days.
Memories of Old Days. That's a great song.
Sorry, man.
For Nobody is great.
Tell me it's the irregular
For
one.
Nobody, especially.
Winning.
For Nobody, yeah.
For Nobody.
The whole side. Is
Yeah,
I think that's the most criminally.
If Steven messes with that bass note in For Nobody, I'm gonna hunt him down. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'll join you.
You say again about a bass note on For Nobody?
Yeah, do boom boom. Yeah, when Ray goes up when the jam starts. Yeah, don't mess with that. Just saying. Let's talk about sacred songs.
Note he he left on a note. Who did it?
Wilson hasn't mixed it.
Well, he hasn't mixed. Well, no, he has mixed it probably, but it's not yet.
Not out yet.
So,
but what I want to tell you is that I want to go back to Alan, what he said about what's his name? Steven Wilson.
Yeah.
I agree with what you said. I think it's hit and miss with him. I think some of his remixes are good and some are not good. I think the best one he did was the suite, the 3-piece suite with the giant. I noticed a big difference on that song, but most of the other the albums, I don't. He, you know, he reduces the volume and it's not as punchy. It's like you hear more clarity, but it's not. It's like it lowers the volume and it's not as punchy. So yeah, some people are gonna like that better, and other people are not gonna like that better. You know,
I think the common thread is that among Gentle Giant fans, whether it comes to Steven Wilson's work or the earlier versus the later albums, there's going to be, there's going to be different opinions. But again, I think that the most important thing to remember is that, the band is responding to us, the fans. They could have had 10 albums and that was it. And yet we're getting this. This is, for many of us, I've read some of the response online to the interview album, and this is something fresh and new for us. If nothing else, even if you listen to this interview remix and you thought, well, this wasn't my thing, it makes you go back and take a look at the original. It helps you maybe appreciate the original more. And
I haven't heard it yet. And
yeah,
so,
and so
heard it yet? All you guys have heard it? Or
we've
how many have heard it here?
I just listened to it on Spotify just before the call, just so I had a
All you
point
guys
of
have heard it.
reference.
I haven't heard it yet.
I've not heard it yet.
Okay.
I've heard it. I heard it all yesterday, and I was driving home I lost my head, and oh my goodness,
Yes.
what blew me away on the remix for I Lost My Head was right out the gate. He brought out the massive low end of the harpsichord that Carrie's playing. So it's really booming, but you can still hear all the notes and the clarity of the harpsichord being the harpsichord, but it's really booming.
Cool.
Yeah,
Brad,
look
you
at-
were talking about clarity. It's ELP again. So, but he remixed Brain Salad Surgery, and his remix of Brain Salad Surgery is so clean, it's unreal. I mean, you can hear things in there you couldn't hear in the original mix.
Yeah, but who remixed that, Lee?
Steven Wilson.
Steven Wilson.
Go back and do that, huh?
Yeah.
I agree with what CJ said earlier, because I talked to Steven Wilson backstage at a hand cannot erase, and I asked him, I said, why did you say, because Keith Emerson was a friend of our family, and I said, why did you say the first 2 albums were the only ones you wanted to remix? And he thought those were the best ones, because after that he didn't think they really progressed.
Interesting, because he did Tarkus too.
But he did come back, and because I have to admit, the Brain Salad Surgery original, I've never really liked it. It just sounds hollow. There's something
It's
about
muddy, yeah.
it doesn't sound good. I mean, maybe because Eddie Offord wasn't doing it, but he's cleaned it up. I'll be anxious to see it.
Yep.
Awesome.
what do you guys think of the song? I want to say, what do you guys think of the song design? It is, I've heard some people that
I love it. I love it.
Me too.
I've
So fun. I think it's one of the most fun songs.
It had to grow on me. It had to grow on me. It used to be
definitely.
along with the second song, Lullaby, the Lullaby, the Inmate's Lullaby. It took a while for it to grow on me, but once it did, it's just what really blew me away was when hearing Derek talk
So
about
great.
it.
That's one of the
What
songs that
got
for
me-
me makes it sound a little more avant-garde, because the chord
Yeah.
changes in there are so interesting. It doesn't seem like anything Gentle Giant does anywhere else. But I still like it. I mean, design is really good.
Yeah.
But I think there's odd chord jumps in that song that
By the way,
you
the
sort of have
latest
to get
video
used to.
with Derek Shulman, and he says that's his favorite on the album.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he loves it.
Recently, yeah. He said
Yeah.
it's weird. I think that's one of the best ones on
Yeah.
I'm a percussionist, so listening to that song is just so much fun for me, especially at the end where they're all banging on the drums.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Especially in the Steven Wilson remix,
Yeah,
really brings them out.
yeah,
Oh my
that's where
I'm
I
waiting.
really
I'm,
shine.
wait, I'm waiting for the drum corps version of that tune. That would be good.
I'll run that past my band director.
The Blue
I'll make
Knights,
sure he
dude,
hears that.
design.
we were talking about Ray, and what do you think the star moment for him was on this album? Is there any part of it you think that's his best
Timing.
bit? Timing.
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 for
Based
sure.
on timing. Oh my goodness.
It was
Yeah.
it was such a he does both such an standalone of awesome unique bass line, and of course all of his violin work on it is phenomenal, as well as Empty City. I think Empty City and Timing are his two standout highlights.
And I'll also add just the acoustic guitar he played on Empty City as well, which I've had the privilege to dissect and play. It's a beautiful and surprisingly difficult little thing to play properly. And it's beautiful. I love playing. In fact, I was thinking about it earlier today, just not even thinking about the interview album or coming here. Just I want to get back to playing it again because I miss playing it. It's been a while. Such beautiful.
Just
I
so
love Ray's
beautiful.
acoustic guitar work and memories of old days for that
Was-
matter too.
Was it Empty City
Yeah.
recently that someone asked Gary what the changes were, and he says, "I didn't play that song. Ray did." Maybe I'm confusing it with another tune.
I heard that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
I've got
I don't
some.
know if I think of Ray Shulman, I think of Playing the Fool, because when I saw him live in Dallas, he and Kerry Green were doing dual acoustic guitars, and it's the recording on the song, and I mean on the album. And every time we think about Ray, I just think about him playing acoustic guitar.
Hmm.
Beautiful acoustic guitar player.
Very underrated acoustic guitar player.
Absolutely.
It's the greatest all ever.
Hey, speaking of Ray Shulman, I think his best playing is on Freehand and Glass House. Those are the two. I mean, as far as bass, I mean, of course it's all great, but like those two albums stand out as far as his unique lines and the most complicated lines. I think Glass House and Freehand are like unbelievable. I mean, God, that is just ridiculously great bass playing.
From a player standpoint, I think the most
Now.
complex thing is definitely Mr. Class and Equality.
Oh.
Mr. Class and Equality is the hardest thing of his I've ever tried to play.
I gave that to one of my students at School of Rock recently. I just actually stopped teaching there, but I gave that to him, and since he was a
time to
my
kill.
bassist, I didn't give him tab. I just gave him the score actually from the General Giant website, which is a little wrong, so I had to make some corrections to it. But
If someone could clarify this, Jake said in the Steven Wilson remix of Three Friends in the song Mr. Class and Quality, he omits the grunt that Derek does, like just before Gary goes into solo. Is that true?
Yeah, it's gone.
Yep, you missed the grunt. You missed the. Anyway, that's just a little
I'm
complaint.
surprised.
No, he's good. It's good and bad, in my opinion. But anyway, that's just carry on. That's
For those of you who know, and I think all of us, well, many of us, I would say most people in the prog world that are used to Chris Squire, and he got all the attention. I would say he's probably the hands down the best rock bassist there is. But
I disagree. Sorry, Ray Shulman. Thank you.
well, I know that. We know how you feel. But what is it? What I wanted to say, just kind of, to honor him, especially you guys that play the bass. What was so special about him? What did he do that, say, Chris Squire and Geddy Lee and
Well,
these
I'll
others
answer that. The notes, the feel, the groove, the choice of
interval jumps and all
sound,
his approach. Yeah.
the composition, just to write that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all a big package. It's a big package deal. And getting back to Chris Squire is one of my favorites too. I'm not like gonna knock him, of course. Of course, Jocko, Zeppelin, Percy Jones, all those guys. But no, that right there, I mean, Ray Shulman, man, just the fact that he could play those bass lines and create that stuff and then play violin and then sing those incredible backing vocals like on Time to Kill, and like and everything else, and then do all, tambourine or knots or whatever, what have you, everything, and trumpet and no, he didn't play recorder, but you know what I'm talking about. Everything else,
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
When
I don't know if it's because Chris Squire and
Mark.
Eddie Lee played like Rickenbackers, and stuff that they were mixed way up front, but Ray
Yeah.
Shulman, he was doing so many things, he didn't need to be up front, that's.
Well,
But he was always my favorite Gentle Giant player, period. Of all, I love them all, but he's my favorite for sure. And one day I can share
just love the
why
feat.
he's my favorite too, because he's one that just kind of, when I met him backstage, he introduced me to all the different band members and asked me if I'd like to go watch him do a sound check. And he was just the most incredible guy, man.
Tell them about that story.
Well, if you have time,
Real
if
fast.
you have time,
Yeah, it'll only take a minute.
this has
Tell
to do
'em.
with the freehand tour.
It's a
but-
classic story. Yeah, tell them real fast.
But I,
Take a minute.
as a teenage kid, I didn't have any connections in the music business, so I decided I would go to Capitol Records and schmooze the A&R girls there and try to get backstage passes or tickets, good tickets to see Giant, And at that time, as you know, In a Glass House was an import, and these girls, and one of the girls that I met was actually said she was dating Derek Shulman when he came into town. It was a real, quiet thing, keep it on the down low thing, right? So she said she couldn't ever find In a Glass House, but see, I knew where to get it. So I got her a copy and I said, hey, all you got to do is it's a gift. I brought her flowers, candies, whatever it took. I said, all I want is like, if you can get me great seats to Gentle Giant concerts or backstage to meet her or anything. So she told me when the freehand tour was coming, I decided with my friends, let's go down to the Shrine before the show and see, hey, if we can meet him, And just so happened when we got there in the afternoon, the side door to the Shrine, it faces on the street, it was open. And we went to my best friends that were Giant hardcore fans too. And I said, hey, let's go back and see what we can find out. And they said, no, we don't want to do that. I said, well, screw you, I'm doing it. So I snuck in there and I was kind of hiding in the shadows and stuff. And I saw Ray and I went right up to Ray and I started saying, hey, I'm a big Giant fan. I love you guys and blah, blah, blah. And he says, well, hey, you want to meet the band? I said, hell yeah. So they're all in the banquet room and they're eating and they asked me if I'd like to join them. I said, no, that's your food. I don't want to eat your food or anything. And I had brought a promotional picture of Giant, that one from 75 where they're sitting like in some, it looks like a stone building and they're all sitting down there. And I got them all to sign that picture. I was trying to find it so I could show it to you guys. But anyways, after I got sitting down and was talking to him, just told him I'd been a big fan for a couple of years at that point and just said, hey, you guys are so great. It's just a shame you're not more recognized and appreciated. But down deep, I was thinking, I'm glad because you're going to keep playing in smaller places.
Yeah.
So anyways, after I got them all to sign it, Ray says, hey, we're about ready to do our sound check. Would you like to watch it? And I go, hell yeah, do I want to watch you guys do a sound check? So it was only me and some guy and some girl was sitting there. So I'm in the Shrine sitting there and they're doing they did freehand, they did Mr. Class and Quality, and they did Cogs and Cogs. And I'm just sitting there all by myself, like, I can't believe this. They're playing for me.
Yeah.
They were done. I went back up there to Ray and I said, hey, Ray, man, can you get, my buddies are outside. Can you get us on the list for after the show? And he goes, well, go talk to our manager over there. It was a German woman, right? She was their road manager at the time. And I went up to her and I said, hey, I work with Capitol Records. I bullshitted. And I said, hey, I work with Capitol Records and I don't think they got me on the list. Can you add me? And so and so. Who are you? Get the hell out of here.
Oh man.
But hey, at least I got to meet the band and I got to get a private show. And
No, that's unbelievable.
then and then for the show I had fourth row center, so I was digging that show anyway. So
Well, I tell you, that's right.
I'm just fortunate that I was alive and old enough to be able to see him. I saw him. I didn't get to see him at the Whiskey because my friend screwed me. He never picked me up. But I saw the Civic Show, which was one of my favorites, and then I saw him at the Shrine twice. I saw, talking about Interview, I saw them at the Arlington Theater in Santa Barbara at 6 row center seats, and I went with that girl from Capitol and her boyfriend, but the one that said she had a thing going with Derek Shulman. And then the next day I saw them support, they were with Gary Wright, Peter Frampton, Comes Alive tour, and yes, and my ears are still screwed up from that show. But
Yeah.
Yeah, can we talk about how wild a pairing that was for, there was like a few nights of that. Gary Wright, Peter Frampton, something where if you want to bring your girlfriend, you could bring your girlfriend and she'll be just go, oh yeah, let's go see Peter Frampton. Haha, tricky, now you get to see Gentle Giant and yes.
Oh, man.
Gentle Giant came out like at 4:45 in the afternoon, so it's like, I just saw him the night before, which was just an incredible show. And it was kind of weird seeing him in the daytime way up there on stage, because I was down on the field. And but like, it was a quick set. They didn't play a whole lot of stuff, but it was still cool to see him, But it was more impressive, and I enjoyed Gentle Giant in a more smaller setting. I wish I could have seen some of the whiskey shows, but I can't lie to you and say I didn't. But I did see the Santa Monica show, and according to, I think, Gary Green or some of the Gentle Giants, they said that was one of their best shows ever. And I can tell you, when we'll talk about Ray Shulman, the very last song they did was Plain Truth, and he did a whole violin thing with the audience. He would go
surround sound.
He'd do a whole thing.
The quad.
He would do that, and then people would respond to him. Then he'd do it again. He'd stop and we'd respond to him, and it was just an awesome crowd thing. It was just, they'd already blown us away the whole show, and then all of a sudden here's Plain Truth, and he's just getting us all involved in it. It was great, man. I wish I had a live recording of that, but I don't think there's.
I do. I've got a recording of the Santa Barbara, so I'd be able to get it out to you after.
Oh,
it's not the best, but it is out there.
Santa Barbara or Santa Monica?
I'll have to double check. I might have both.
That was great.
Well, I tell you, there's, hearing these moments from you guys that have been there and seen them live, it's just amazing. I think we got to kind of wrap this up, but just kind of final thoughts. I mean, it could be anything, but let's just go around, and I'd just like to just say, your thoughts about this album and the band. Alan.
Well, I mean, the band has been my reference point for music since I was, I guess, 17. And, they've just been the foundation for me. And Interview, well, you've heard this before. I think their best albums to me are Acquiring the Taste all the way up through Interview, and the second half the second album side of Missing Piece. But if you held a gun to my head and asked me what my favorite was, I would say Interview. So I think it was the most, I don't know, something about it, just if I had to pick one, it would be my favorite. It's probably the least accessible overall, even though there are some more accessible tracks. And this, if I had to just go on a desert island with one, that would be the one I'd probably pick.
Mark, I was going to ask you before we go, how much of this did they play live? Do you know?
You're asking. Listen, I'm pissed at Brett talking about how many times he's seen Gentle Giant. I don't know. I'm not the guy to answer that question. I'm not that guy.
And I know they've played Interview, they played Give It Back, they played Timing, and in the I Lost My Head, but that was all they ever played live. It's just those 4 songs, and they only played 3 of those for the first half of the '76 tour. Dropped on the second half, of course, for
thanks to Jack Skelly for letting us know all that stuff.
Yeah,
right.
For those of who didn't see it.
Yeah.
So I would say, I mean, Gentle Giant taught me how to listen to music differently, right? So I mean, I came, and I think Interview and The Power and the Glory primarily, So Sincere, gave me a different pair of ears to use to listen to music, because those were probably the 2 that I was immersed in the most. So like, I had a brother. My brother was a Genesis fan, but I don't think he necessarily was a music fan. You know what I mean? His dimension of music was pretty narrow. So this opened up a whole new world for me. And like I said earlier, Interview holds up very well in the grand scheme of everything that came before it, and the stuff that came after, of course, was a little bit different. But really good, especially design and timing, and Empty City on this album. These things I listen to and love as much as I did the first time. I have one more thing to say before you move on. Kirk, I am really, really happy about the efforts that you put into this. I mean, we have this website on Facebook group, and we talk about Gentle Giant a bit, and we do our thing. But you're doing something completely different. You are creating content around this band that we love. You're putting new things out there. No one's doing that. No one's doing anything like that, Kirk. And I told you probably in an email or a side conversation, this is special, man. It's really special, and I want to thank you.
Yeah, you're here.
Amen, brother. We love it.
Yes.
Love you,
Well,
brother.
I really appreciate that.
Here's to that.
The thing of it is I just, this whole time I felt like there's a story to be told about the band. And when I was younger and I had really bad problems with depression, I didn't have a lot of friends. Music to me was something that got me through life, got me onto the next stage where I had things more together. But because I went through such a dark time back then, I think, and Gentle Giant's music had such an effect on me. Anytime that you could kind of step away and get into their music, it meant so much to me. And then when I began to meet some of the other fans and stuff, I'm just like, why not? Let's do something. And I'm humbled by saying that. But this band is worth talking about. You picked it for your first show, Lee. I mean, that's saying a lot. You had a lot to pick from. And Crimson fans, Yes fans, ELP, they're everywhere. And Rush fans, they weren't so much years ago, but now they're everywhere. And yet you picked them for your first show. I mean, that says a lot.
Yeah. I just think the influence is huge. I was reading James LaBrie. I was reading some stuff of his, and he picked out Gentle Giant as an influence. Richard Henshaw of Haken, Gentle Giant is an influence.
Jordan Rudess.
Yeah, Jordan Rudess. He did just the same, I think.
Oh man,
on one of his solo
version.
albums.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
His version of Justice. Oh my gosh.
Yep. And it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to do a prog show. Well, okay, yes, Genesis, ELP, we can all name them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many people that I think leave Gentle Giant out of that discussion. And I think that's a real shame, because I think, like you guys were talking about bands that it reminds you of. I think Spock's Beard is like totally based on a Gentle Giant sound to me. All the acapella stuff they do, the voices in the round, just the stuff that Neil Morse writes with Thoughts. And I mean, it's old now because he's out, but I always thought Spock's Beard was a Gentle Giant derivative. But anyway, to answer your question, Kirk, Interview here, great album. I agree with Alan. I think it is a little bit inaccessible to a lot of people, but I think it's hugely strong. I Lost My Head, that ended up being on my top 10 list for years and years and years.
Yeah.
My favorite album, though, is Octopus. Nobody's really talked about Octopus here, but I love Octopus. The Advent of Panurge, amazing song. Knots, all of that.
That's the project. But it's amazing to me that, like people like Christian and CJ, you guys are finding their music today. And we're all still here, still talking about them. But I wanted to thank you guys for all joining, and I hope we'll do more things like this. I want to let you in on a couple of things that are coming up. Stanley Whitaker is going to be on an upcoming show, and we're also going to be having Lee. Have you heard of a group called Madrigal? They are going to be releasing a new album, and they're going to have a show with us. I'm hoping maybe Billy Sherwood would pop in, but who knows? So we got some good things coming up. So a lot of good things to look forward to. I'm going to have to break this up into a couple of different episodes, but this has been great. I have loved every minute of this. hearing the stories of people that have been there to see them, it's band that's changed our lives. So I want to say to the Shulmans and John and Carrie and Malcolm and you guys keep putting out new things, and we're thankful that you worked on getting this album re-released, and I hope that you enjoy this tribute. And so with that, I guess we're going to just kind of wrap up. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Kiirja, Christian, Brett, and Jacob, and Mark, and CJ. Thank you guys for joining the show. This has been Giant Chat, and we're going to sign out. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thanks, Kirk.
Thanks,
Good,
Kirk.
guys.
Hey, good to see you. Good to see you
Thanks
guys.
for having us.
Good to see you guys.
Take care.
Best band ever. Channel Giant lives.
Yes, they do. Thanks, guys.
Right.